Hi and welcome to the Sunday Lunch Project Manager podcast for Sunday, the 21st of May 2023. This is your host, Nigel Creaser, and today we have a recast of my interview that I had with Ben Aston back in 2019. Enjoy! So this week we have a slightly different episode. I have decided to put out some of my older items on times when I'm going to be busy doing other things. This week isn't one of those weeks actually. It is just because I had some technical issues with the recording of my interview with Rob Wansley. So I'm just working through that and it took longer than I expected, and so I didn't have the show ready for the weekend. So rather than hopping around other things, I thought give you some content that you should enjoy. I interviewed Ben back in 2019, who focuses on digital project management. Really interesting interview. It's an area that I wasn't fully au fait, still aren't fully au fait with, but really interesting. So I hope you really enjoy it. From my perspective, what's been going on, I've had another couple of great interviews over the past couple of weeks, and they just seem to be coming thick and fast. Always looking for new guests, so if you're interested, one of the things I do want to do is talk to some of you project managers out there and kind of do that background interview with you that I used to do, rather than the sort of more technical items. And as you can probably hear in the background, I am just taking a leisurely walk today while recording this, trying to fit a couple of things in once. So a few tweets in the background, and if the content isn't as clean and tidy, and a few other people chatting in the background, hopefully you can be happy with that. And I think that's it really. Coming forward, I'm off for a week or so. I will hopefully have Rob Wansley's interview sorted for next weekend and the following weekend, so those two will come out. And it's really interesting actually, because the conversation we had, Rob helps organisations and individuals with storytelling, which from my point of view, we as project managers, as individuals, are storytelling beasts, and we tell stories as part of our jobs. And some people may disagree with that, but the way my point of view is that we think about how to put across a topic, how to put across a persuasive argument, how to teach people, how to coach people. And the use of stories is really useful, whether they be from your own background or from others, to get across those points and kind of emphasise, maybe draw in a bit of emotion as well. So hopefully you will agree, and Rob shares some tips on that. So that'll be great next week, so a little bit of a trailer for that. And I'm just in the process of finishing off getting a bit wider distribution on the audiobook, the AI narrated. I've got one audio. I'm having trouble with audio files at the moment, so I have one audio file I have to fix for the particular stores that I'm pushing it to through a company called Publish Drive, but that hopefully will be available in the next week. So then if you're not a Kobo or a Kobo or a Google audiobook listener, you might find another service that would help you. Anyway, I think that's it. I'm just arriving at a little coffee shop so I can have a cup of coffee this morning and get on to some more work, and have a fantastic day, and hope you enjoy this interview with Ben Aston. Cheers now, bye. So today I'd like to welcome to the Sunday Lunch Project podcast Ben Aston, the digital project manager. Ben brings over 15 years of experience in both strategic thinking, tactical implementation from a career at top digital agencies including FCV, Dare, Wonderman, DLKW Low and DDB. He's been fortunate enough to work across verticals including transit, utilities, fast-moving consumer goods, consumer electronics, e-commerce, automotive, financial services, public sector and retail brands. He's a certified Scrum Master, Prince 2 practitioner and a founder of the Digital Project Management blog. The Digital Project Manager, which was founded in 2011, and it's become one of the largest, most credible platforms for digital project management information and thought leadership. With features and articles how-to guides, tools, reviews, jobs, and just things that are amusing and funny. It draws a rapidly expanding global audience of digital project managers, with over 40 contributors and 300 articles published, and over 2,000 in the PM in the Slack team for the DPM. So, Ben, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Excellent. So, I've sent over my script, as we've talked about before, and so let's get to it. Really, is kind of, where were you born? I know you're somewhere in North America at the moment, but where were you born?
Yeah, well, originally, I was born in Gloucester, in the west of England. So yeah, I now live in Vancouver in Canada, but yes, I spent my childhood in the fields with the cows in the west of England. Yeah, so I grew up there until I stayed there until I was 18, I think it was, and yeah, then hopped off to university on the south coast at Sussex. So yeah, that's where things started off for me.
That's where you grew up, and so you're living in Vancouver now, do you say?
Yep, I'm on the west coast of Canada, and yeah, it's a beautiful place to be living. Although, and people in Vancouver are always surprised when I tell them this, but prior to Vancouver, I lived in London for 10 years or so, and it rains half as much in London as it does in Vancouver. So if you know how rainy the UK is,
yeah.
Well, London is dry, but people are always surprised when they're like, "Why are you complaining about the rain? The UK is rainy." I'm like, "Yeah, but not this rainy." So yeah, I'm battling the rain here in Vancouver.
Oh, brilliant. So have you got family there?
Yeah, so I live here with my wife and 2 kids, and but yeah, my family actually is currently in Kenya, in Rwanda, and some of them are in the UK. But wow. Yes, we are a global family.
Oh, excellent. So how old are the kids?
They are now 4 and 6.
Oh wow.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
That's a project then.
Yes, yeah, they keep me busy and on my toes for sure.
Yeah, I know the feeling. So you said you went to university at Sussex.
Yes.
What did you do there?
I did. Well, yeah, I did politics and international relations. So my plan had been at some stage to do computer science, because growing up I spent my younger teenage years making websites. I think I kind of got into computers around 1995 when Windows 3.1 was on its way out, and Windows 95 came round, and the excitement of all things with the internet was suddenly very accessible. So I started making websites and got really excited about that. I thought I'd do a degree in computer science, but then I spent a year in industry working in the Ministry of Defence, and realized actually I didn't want to sit behind a computer and code all day. So then I made this decision that I wanted to do something more general, politics and international relations, and so that's what I did, and then decided that I kind of wanted to make this transition into marketing and communications, which was more exciting to me, and bid the world of computer science goodbye.
Oh, wow. So it was, when you say you wanted to get into the computers, was that what you wanted to be when you were growing up in Gloucester, or was that just when you got a bit older and started to make some conscious decisions of this is where you want to be?
I think, growing up as a kid, I wanted to be a fighter pilot. I think I was very enamored by Top Gun and the idea of flying. I mean, I'm still am. I think it's still one of my life goals to learn to fly, and and have a plane and just shoot around the place. So that's still a career ambition. Maybe not as a career, but as something to do. Yeah. But yes, I wanted to be a fighter pilot. But then I think when I realized, hey, I really love the internet and everything that it could do, and just the possibilities were endless, and that got me really excited, and it still does. But I think the idea of coding it myself became less of an exciting prospect when I realized how much work it was and how much easier it was to ask other people to do it and just direct them instead.
So coming up with the bright ideas is what you wanted to do then, really.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. So you said you went straight from the politics and stuff into marketing. How did that transition work? Were you doing anything in between that, or?
Yeah, well, I think I decided at university that I wanted to get into marketing and communications. And
What was it that drew you to that?
I think my uncle worked in PR, and I think I just liked the idea of, well, the world of advertising was very sexy to me, and I spent some time at university doing internships at a couple of ad agencies, and just absolutely loved it, and so decided that's what I wanted to get into. So yeah, straight after university, I got into a grad scheme for one of the ad agencies, and yeah, that was my first proper job, working on the Stella Artois account. Yeah, that was fun and that was exciting. But it was a grad scheme in which it was kind of like Pop Idol, where only the fittest survived. Yeah. So it was a job, but then at the end of the summer, so it was 3 or 4 months we worked there, and we were paid not very much money. And then at the end of the summer, they culled 75% of people. Only a few got through to actual permanent jobs. And so actually that was a bit of an epiphany for me, where the feedback that I got from them was, you've got your fingers in too many pies. You're not excited enough about radio, TV, and press. You keep on talking about other stuff. And I don't think I was serious enough about advertising for them, because I was excited about everything digital. And so that's when I realized, oh, hold on, there's ad agencies that just focus on digital. Well, that sounds like it's a much better fit for me. So that's where I ended up at an agency called Wonderman. I was started off as an account manager there, or an account exec. And yeah, that was following the Pop Idol-esque debacle. That was my first real kind of job involved in projects.
Oh wow! So that's Wonderman. Where was that? Was that in London, or was?
Yeah, that was in Camden. In Greater London House. I don't know if they're still there, but there's a really cool building, Greater London House, just outside Mornington Crescent. And I was there for a few years.
Brilliant. So, just I suppose this is a question. It's a question for me. I'm in a kind of a what's the best word to say? Middle age is probably the best way to describe me. And this, in the last 10 years, the digital transformation of the world seems to have happened. Everyone's gone digital, and I thought the question that I ask is, what is digital for you? So you are the digital project manager. So how would you define it, the elevator pitch of what digital means from your point of view?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. I think within the context of digital project management, and I think when I first started the blog, I got a lot of hate mail around
probably from old gits like me. No.
Yeah, well, around people saying, "What are you talking about? Why are you calling this digital project management?" And I kind of said, well, it's not me. It's what people call it. Like, that's what my job title is. I didn't choose it. It's just what it says on the job description. So I think digital project management describes project management within a particular context. And the context that I have been working in throughout my career has been this with digital agencies. And I think everyone agrees a digital agency exists. So it's a project management. It's a flavor of project management. And I often talk about, we're all milkshakes and I'm just strawberry. And that's just kind of the word. We're just a flavor and it's a context. So the work that we often do is around we're often working with marketing clients. They're marketing and communication kind of projects. So we're often working with internal marketing teams. They're often, rather than being B2B, they're kind of end user focused. So they're very customer experienced focused. we're often thinking about optimizing a user journey, converting people, and really thinking really, in traditional project management, we think about earned value, but we're kind of talking about, okay, how are we delivering results for the client, and how are we generating ROI for them? So it's because they're often marketing kind of projects, things are a bit more fast and loose, and there's normally not enough time. Like, the timelines are really compressed, the budgets are insufficient, and it's kind of the wild west of project management is kind of what I talk about it. Like, this is the environment where you can't really apply a traditional PMI PMBOK approach, because by the time you created all the documentation, the project would be over like a month ago. So these are really fast and loose projects. You have to be really nimble and agile about it, and creative about how you deliver a solution that's going to deliver results in a really small and short amount of time with limited budget. So it's very creative, it's very customer experience focused, and I think that kind of describes this in the environment that we're talking about. But yeah, is digital project management different from project management? No, it's just a flavor of it.
Oh, cool. It's an interesting way of describing when you talk about the sort of those customer experiences. Does it tend to be, from your point of view, it is literally going to be things like where people are using a web browser, they are using a mobile phone app, or it's where the end consumer or the main end customer is touching, and that's where a lot of these work. And then obviously having interfaces back into the sort of legacy systems and the sort of slower burn systems. But yours are more that hands-on, real hands-on type of things, type of experiences.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of digital projects, I'd say, are characteristically there is some interaction of some kind. In the early days, lots of the digital agencies were called something interactive. So I worked for Wonderman Interactive, and that's not so really much the case anymore. But there tends to be some kind of interaction, whether or not that's on a screen or on your phone, or an app. But then digital agencies will, the remit, I'd say, is growing as well. So it could as well, it could be a website, it could be an app, it could be some content, it could be some content strategy, it could be some video content, or it could be some, I don't know, digital billboard. So it doesn't, I mean, just defining it as interactive is kind of limited. But I think what you're kind of touching on there with, hey, it's something that an end user or a potential customer or user would interact with in some way. It might be passively interacting, but yeah, that's kind of describes something of what digital is. And that can be as well anything from marketing campaigns as well. So it could be you're setting up PPC ads on AdWords or Facebook. It could be running a social media campaign, creating the video, creating a website, creating an app. It's all things, okay, what's going to actually impact the end user, and what's going to deliver ROI for the person who's paying for this thing. Yeah,
I get that. And are you, and I don't, so I'm going to harp on a little bit of one of my little hobby horses and things I'm interested in is the voice interface stuff. I'm guessing that's starting to, and I know I've talked to a couple of marketing guys myself around this, is starting to bleed into this as a tool alongside all of those other ones you've just mentioned.
Definitely.
The Facebooks, the social, and all those. It's another tool, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And one of the projects that I was working on at my last agency was actually looking at how we can use Alexa skills to it was a transit app basically, and the idea was, okay, how can we reduce the number of calls to call centers, which 90% of them were, hey, when's the bus arriving? How can we use a voice interface to cut out the need for someone to pick up the phone and say, oh, it's just around the corner. So I think voice as well is going to be a really interesting interface for us to play with.
The marketing. Yeah, the marketing opportunities with it, I think it become massive because of the bit that I kind of pick up on myself is around the flash briefing stuff on the Alexas, where you invite a brand in and let them sit with you at breakfast fundamentally when you say, tell me what's going on today. And whereas with the and the big brands are going to struggle to actually get in there because people aren't necessarily going to enable a big generic brand that would normally pop up on your billboard, but something that you're a fan of, you're more likely to. So your little local breweries, your little local restaurants or pubs or whatever you'll let them in, won't you? And as long as they don't abuse that choice, then you'll keep them there. And whenever you have something going on, they're listening. So
well, it's interesting, wasn't it, though, that there's people got up in arms about Fortnite. Did you see that about the people getting ads for Fortnite? And it was, I can't quite remember the context for it, but it wasn't consensual in any way. There was just Alexa started telling people, oh, and have you played Fortnite yet today, or something like that? You should check it out. But it is kind of scary when you think about where do you draw the line? Like what's useful and what's not.
Yeah, it makes you, because the thing is once it becomes intrusive, then it stops happening, doesn't it? It stops becoming effective, and you have your box in the corner that when you want to interact with it, that's really useful. It becomes if every so often it pops up and goes, "Oi, why don't you do this?" Then unless you've asked it to remind you something, and unless it's convenient to you, it as you say, it's quite intrusive then. So it's a difficult balance because the organizations have got to monetize it, haven't they? And how do they monetize it? And it's gonna unfold to be very interesting, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
So you mentioned that you've got a few industries you've worked in. You were saying you're in the transit industry there, and I'm guessing obviously with Stella Artois, you maybe enjoyed that as one of your first grad postings there. You might have got a few free samples in there.
Yeah, well, I don't know if they're free, but they were definitely, there was definitely beer around.
I thought there might be. So how did you actually get into being a project manager? So when did you suddenly go, oh, well, I'm a project manager?
I was tricked. I was working at an agency as an account manager, and I had been offered a job as a producer. And what they told me was that, hey, this is effectively the same thing as you're doing already. Now, either I'd misinformed them about what I was doing already, or they were just trying to trick me. But I ended up the first day in my role as a producer. And the producer is essentially a client-facing project manager. So I was responsible for producing. It was another digital agency, and I was responsible for making everything happen. I was doing the account management, but I was also doing the project management, and that was my first role at an agency called Dare. And I found myself as a producer and suddenly realizing, I remember my first day where they said, oh, so can you just pull together a project plan? And here's your Microsoft project license. Just get cracking. And I'd never opened Microsoft Project before. I'd always worked with project managers who created the timelines for me. So the idea, there I was I remember my first day watching YouTube videos on how to make a project plan. And that was my baptism of fire into project management.
So is that, I might be misremembering this, but did I see something on your digital PM posts on LinkedIn or on Facebook where you've got how to get started with Microsoft Project as a video or something like that, or a tutorial? Am I imagining that, or is that probably where that stemmed from?
Well, we do have we run something called the DPM school, so the Digital Project Management School, and we've got a course, and it's called Mastering Digital Project Management. And in the course, we teach everything. We try and explain the entire project lifecycle in 7 weeks. So we go through project initiation, project planning, and we go through estimating, creating project timelines. So maybe that was where you saw that there.
That's it. Yeah, I might have seen something on there because I was kind of wondering whether that's quite often it's point people at a book, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
And as
And
you
I think
say,
that
YouTube it.
yeah, and there's different ways. I mean, I love Microsoft Project now, and I think it's a great tool. But I think there's a lot of disdain for project planning in the first place,
Hmm.
but also for like traditional project management tools like Microsoft Project. As you know, there's such an appetite to be agile that people, I find, are like, as soon as they see a Gantt chart, they think, oh, well, that looks very traditional. I'm not sure we want to run the project like that.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah. People associate tools with methodology,
yeah,
and that isn't
yeah,
always exactly the right thing, is it?
no, yeah,
I know I've been running some waterfall type projects, and we've been using Jira boards and Trello boards and things like that, but we're not necessarily doing agile projects, but using them as a tool for
yeah,
work management is a really good tool. And,
yeah,
and it's kind of like you can use Microsoft Project Plan, you can use Gantt charts to structure your big release planning, can't you? And
yeah,
then within those release planning, you have iterations that are running pure agile, and but they still fit into those high level release plans.
yeah,
I guess with a lot of the things you're doing there, a bit like that product owner, product manager sort of traditional sort of history, where you'd have a marketing product manager who owns a product, whereas it used to be the physical product, whereas now it'll be the product, which would be the campaign that you'll be running, I
yeah,
guess.
yeah,
Fits.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, or it could be the website that they're trying to produce, and you're
Yeah.
doing regular iterations on that. But yeah, I think the also yeah the kind of um debate around, is this agile or is it not agile, kind of misses the point where actually the label that we call our process isn't really important. What matters is this right? Does this work? Is this efficient? And are we doing this the best way possible? Rather than getting caught up in the idea like just because you've marked up a project plan and it looks like a Gantt chart, that doesn't mean it's not agile.
Yeah.
With a, yes, it might not be Scrum, and I think people are getting confused, like because people aren't following Scrum necessarily, that it can't be agile. So
No.
Scrum's done a great job of
Yeah.
proselytizing and trying to convince people that hey, the only way to do agile is Scrum, but that's
Yeah.
not true.
Yeah, well, that's it, isn't it? It's kind of, you've got the Kanban approach where people think, well, and I'll be the same. Not without going through some training. It was when it looked at Kanban, I thought, well, that's just for instant management, and then people explained to me, well, no, it's just how you decide to draw down things, and you can throw them on a Kanban board. You know your sizings of them, and you go, right, we've got 5 pieces of work that's in there. When one's done, pull down the next one, and rather than trying to decide what you're going to do preemptive, and it just gives you that thing of being able to release quickly, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And get the quickest thing you can out without trying to boil the ocean, without spending years planning it. But I think the other thing is that aligning, and I think there's a resistance to this, I think I find, is that people don't want to change. Once they're bet on agile, they don't want to change because they think, well, we said it was agile. And actually, parts of a piece of work, project or product or program or whatever, you'll go, well, this bit we need to do differently. Well, let's do it differently. And choose the right tool for the job. And sometimes you need to go, well, we've done that bit to there, we're ready now. Let's switch over to this approach.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think the disdain for waterfall approaches is totally unmerited, and I think we have to evaluate our projects based on the project that we have, the client that we're working with, the team that we have, and then make a judgment call on what's the best way to approach the project. Not necessarily saying, well, hey, we're an agile company or we're a waterfall, or it doesn't even matter what you call yourself. It just matters that you get it delivered, and that focus on delivery, I think, is what's important.
I agree. So sort of coming into these different and kind of going into the project arena of where you said that first project of yours where you were shanghaied into it. What was that project? Do you want to tell me about it?
I think that project, I'm just trying to think. I think it was for Sony, and it was for Sony Walkman. I don't know if I think Sony still produce Walkmans. Now, obviously, the Walkman that you're probably thinking of is the cassette type, and I'm not that old. But this was
I am.
when they, yeah, when they started. Well, when they released their MP3 player.
Yeah, I remember that. They kept the brand, didn't they? Obviously.
Yeah. So it was a flash site. Remember those
Oh
days?
yeah, yeah.
And it was a very complicated flash site where you could create your own mix in the browser using these kind of loops that we'd created. So it was a very technically complex video looping website, and it didn't go well. It did not go well. So I inherited the project halfway through. Those are always a challenge, and yeah, it did not go well. The project actually never really worked as had initially been planned. It was bleeding edge, and there was just a bit too much blood with the with the limitations of the technology and what we were trying to do in the creative vision of the project. It was a brilliant idea. It was just impossible to execute back in 2003 or whenever it was.
Wow. So I imagine you look at that now and you think, actually, with the tools that we've got around, you could probably do it quite a bit quicker.
Well, yeah, not necessarily quickly, but at least we could get it to work. The problem was we'd created these video loops, and the idea was that, yeah, you could mix on the fly in your browser, but just because music is so important that the timing of things syncs properly. When you try doing that in real time, it's fine if you send it off for batch processing and then it comes back. But when you're trying to do it in real time, getting the videos to all start at exactly the same time, when you had 8 videos, anyway, it was too complicated for 2003, whatever it was.
So with all the multitude of projects that you've done over your career, what would you say would be the largest piece of work that you've managed and what you learned? And when I say largest, I don't necessarily mean man days, money. It's whatever measure of large comes into your mind, whether it might be very, very small value, but actually it was massive influence. You know what I mean? Whatever you would say is feels like the biggest.
I'm going to go for the most expensive because I think that's always fun. So the most expensive one was for a utility company, and they had a sustainability program. It was a loyalty program that was tied around schools, and they launched this loyalty program and were trying to get engagement with kids and teachers in schools. And basically, kids did activities, or teachers got their children to do activities in their classes, and they earned a currency which they could then redeem for prizes.
Yeah.
And the tricky thing about this project is that we inherited it from another agency, and that handover from the old agency to us wasn't entirely well. They were trying to screw us over. They were trying to make us look bad because they'd lost the account, we'd won it, and they were like, well, you're screwed. And
it's one of those scenarios where they only told you what you asked, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So as we were tasked with kind of rebuilding this whole loyalty program and the site and how the currency was earned and spent, and just as the project went on, it was more than £1 million, and it was a multi-year project, and it just seemed that every day we discover something new about this loyalty program that they built, and it just wasn't documented. And it was a disaster. It really was. Because the client wanted to know what their liability was. So how much of the currency was in the system that people could potentially redeem.
Yeah.
Because that's the danger with the loyalty programs is how much have people actually earned, and if they spent them, how much would that cost us? That was all they ever wanted to know. And we were never able to tell them that. And the reason we weren't able to tell them is because depending on how big your school was, a leaf had a different value. So or the currency that I gave away the client maybe there, but the yeah, you might be a school, and if you, I don't know, planted some bulbs in the school, you might earn £10. But if you're a small school, you might earn 20. But then also the pricing for the reward items was different as well. So basically, there was no way for us to work out what their liability was, or how much value was in the system. It was a mess. It was a real mess.
Nightmare. That sounds hard work. So leading on from that, as obviously that wasn't your project.
It became my project.
No, I mean, and it wasn't yours. You didn't create the problem.
I didn't create the mess.
Yeah.
I just was responsible for it.
But what was your biggest screw up in your project management career?
I think it was I made a very personally made a very expensive mistake, and that was I agreed to have a gentleman's discussion around licensing. So I had a particular client who was very difficult to work with, and he always just wanted to get it done, and then we'd kind of talk about the money. Let's have a conversation about that afterwards. Right now, we just need to focus on getting it done. And I made the mistake once of saying, okay, let's have the conversation afterwards. I don't want to delay this. I know it's important for you. Like, there's a marketing campaign, and there's a hard date for this because you've got, they're paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for media that's promoting it. We just need to get it done and not have a debate over 2 weeks about how it's going to be accounted for. But I agreed to do some work that I shouldn't have done, that the client then, of course, later refused to pay for. And that was probably my biggest screw up, because I allowed the work to continue when I should have just put my foot down. But I was just trying to keep the client happy, trying to get things rolling.
And you build up trust, don't you, with people, and you think you can trust them sometimes.
Yeah.
So what did you learn from that?
Well, to never defer those discussions. And I think those discussions happen all the time. As a client, that's kind of what as long as the work's got done, you then have all the negotiating power, right? So I'm now much more inclined to put my foot down really early on in the project and say, okay, well, tools down. We need to stop until we've got this resolved. And I think part of that is the education process that, okay, this isn't, we're not just going to bend over backwards each time, for whatever thing you ask for, and, change scope or be overly flexible. But I think that educating clients early on in the process that there is a process, and that just because they're paying lots of money for something doesn't mean that they can have other things for free. I think is a really important thing for clients to get their heads around sooner rather than later, so that when it comes to these really big things, nobody's surprised when we ask them to pay more money for it.
Yeah, it's setting out your stall early, isn't it?
Definitely.
So I'm just conscious of time. Are you still okay for a little bit?
Yeah.
I'm just thinking I don't want to.
Yeah, I can go for another 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So good, because we can fit in a few more positives than the big screw up. So what would you say is your proudest project delivery then? On the flip side of that, something a bit more positive.
Yeah. So I think for me, I think what has been most exciting has been growing a team, and not actually the projects themselves, but actually growing a team and seeing a team then deliver work effectively. And I love interviewing people and hiring people and finding good people, and building them and growing them, and then seeing them excel. And I think for me, it's been my biggest project, I suppose, has been that process of finding good people, helping them grow, and then seeing them go on to go to other agencies and other places and excel in other things, and knowing that I've had an impact on that. I've been able to help bring them through and get them started and get them to the place where they are now. So for me, that's probably my proudest thing that I'm or biggest achievement. It's not the project itself, it's the cultivating the people and the skills around that.
I get that. It's all about the people, isn't it? You can, the delivering something, you can sit there and go, oh yeah, I'm really pleased that we delivered that as a team, but it's the people who did it anyway. So,
Yeah.
and it is about the fact that you see people grasp opportunities that they didn't think they could take. Sometimes I think is where that leads you through, and it's through the projects and giving people the room to do that, isn't it?
Yeah.
So is that part of the driver around why you started the Digital Project Manager blog then?
Yeah. So I started that back in 2012, and at the time I started it, there was around digital project management. It was it was a reasonably new thing. Digital agencies had been around for 10 years or so, but no one was talking about it. And so that process that I'd had on my first day when I was trying to learn Microsoft Project on the sly, not trying to make sure anyone's realized that I didn't know what I was doing, I just thought, hey, this is ridiculous. Why isn't there some best practice resources out there that as a digital project manager I can draw from and learn from other people? So I set to work writing an ebook, which I still haven't finished, but the ebook idea turned into a blog and has now turned into the Digital Project Manager. So it's turned into this big community of people and this resource hub where we offer training now specifically for digital project management to teach people how to lead and manage projects in a digital world.
Cool. So when's the ebook coming out then?
Oh, when I finish it. Yeah. The idea.
I feel your pain.
Yeah. No, the idea of it was that I was going to write 100 tips for digital project management, and it was just going to be a list of random things. And yeah, I got to about 30, and then I realized, I can't be bothered to finish that anymore. But this blog thing is really taking off. So I don't know. Maybe one day it'll get finished. We'll see.
That would be interesting to read.
Yeah.
Different people consume stuff different ways, don't they? So it's quite useful having those other ones as well. So kind of leading on from there, the last few questions I've got here. So what was the last book on project management you read?
Oh, that is a good question. I always like buying books on project management just to see what other people are writing about. So I read actually didn't buy this one. Colin gave it to me. I don't know if you've heard of Colin Ellis.
He's over in Australia, isn't he, or New Zealand?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm trying to see if I can get him on the show.
Yeah, get him. He's great, and he gave me a copy.
Liverpudlian expert.
Yes.
As well, isn't he?
Yeah. So I read his book, which is all about project leadership, and that was a great book. But you should chat to Colin. He's a good guy.
Okay, well, I'll ping him another message. Yeah, cool. So what about your last project podcast that you listened to? Besides your own, obviously, as you're editing.
That is I don't even listen to my own, so don't worry. Do you know what? I don't actually listen to podcasts. I'll be honest. And so when in my own podcast, I do wonder what podcasts sound like because I don't listen to them. But obviously,
it sounds okay. I've listened to a few of them. They sound okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, so you don't listen to fair enough. And what was the last project? Okay, what's the last project blog that you read?
Elizabeth Harron has got a great blog. It's called Girl's Guide to PM.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily about a girl's guide particularly, but it's just about project management. And her blog is great. She always writes great content. So it would probably be something on that.
Cool. And the final two questions. As a seasoned PM, and other seasoned PMs, whether they're digital or not digital PM, what top tip would you give someone? As a seasoned PM, not necessarily.
Yeah. So I think as a seasoned, having managed senior PMs, and the kind of thing that I'd most get frustrated with, so this will be my tip. So I think as senior PMs, they can often become, I wouldn't say lazy, but just efficient with the way that they manage projects, so much so that obviously the requirement to produce quite so much documentation, as you have a better control of the project, you can get away with producing less documentation. However, my plea to seasoned PMs would be carry on with it, please, because often what will be the case is that project has to be handed on to someone else, and then it becomes this big debacle when you try to as from my perspective, leading a team of project managers, and I've got a senior person who hasn't quite got their ducks in order, but the project is running fine because they're smoothing things over. So my plea would be, don't get lazy. You might need to hand over that project, so be on top of your documentation, and that will make it'll make your life easier, even though it doesn't feel like it. But also prepare you just in case you get seconded to another project.
Yeah, because I think sometimes it's that sheer force of will some projects get delivered by the PMs involved in them, isn't it? And their ability to motivate people and pull stakeholders together and not. And as you say, it's all your focus goes, especially when you're feet to the fire scenario. Your focus goes on solving that feet to the fire issue. And sometimes, as you say, those things will slip, don't they?
Yeah.
Okay. And the final one. So when you were back at, was it Wonderman? No, Dare, wasn't it? Dare. Yeah. When you were there and you sat down and you'd gone, oh, bugger, I'm a project manager. What would you say? What would you have said to young Ben back there?
Yeah, I think
staring at this YouTube video.
I think the mistake that I made early on in my career was that I think maybe it was this case of imposter syndrome that I was like, hey, I don't know if I can do this, but I was really wanting to make a great impression and to be the best that I could, and so I'd say yes to everything, and so I took on far too much. And I think I would tell myself, don't take on more than you can handle, because it doesn't look good if you're not managing your projects. So just because you're managing loads of projects, that doesn't look good. What looks good is that you deliver them well. So I'd say don't be a hero, and don't assume anything. I think when you're kind of junior, you make lots of assumptions. Oh, people must know what they're doing. They've been here for a while, or they seem senior. Just don't assume that ever. And I think the final thing I'd say is keep talking. And I think communication is really the heart of what project management is all about. We're a hub, and we're connecting people, and we're connecting process, and we're making things happen. And I think that power of talking and synchronous communication, I think particularly now there's a trend towards asynchronous communication, and the amount of confusion that comes as a result of that is ridiculous, when actually if you would just get up out of your desk and walk across to talk to someone for 2 minutes, you'd save 15 minutes of slacking back and forth, or messaging and missing one another. So get up and talk, and you're going to save stacks of time and get to where you need to get to a lot more quickly. Yeah,
it's that. Yeah, it's... there's too many tools to communicate. When there was only talking, it was a lot easier because there was only one tool to communicate with.
Yeah.
It was so much easier to avoid misunderstandings, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Well, thank you, Ben, for being on the show. It's been a really entertaining, really interesting conversation. If people want to find out more about you, find out more about what's going on, what's the best way to get in touch with you, or just see what you're doing?
Yeah, so come to the digitalprojectmanager.com. So we've got a massive hub of resources there. And one of the things that we've just launched is membership as well. So with our membership, we're doing monthly webinars. We're releasing case studies if you're interested in the kind of work that we're doing. But we've also created this community as well, where we've got close to 3,000 people on our Slack team, and channels for everything from jobs through to discussions about tools and process and how we apply Agile. But you'll find it all at thedigitalprojectmanager.com.
And all it is for me to say thank you very much and have a lovely rest of your day.
Pleasure. Thanks very much. Cheers.
Thanks, Ben. Well, I'm sure you enjoyed that interview, and as I said earlier, I will be back next week with a brand new episode with Rob Wansley talking about storytelling. So have a great week and speak soon. Bye. So this is my final wrap up. Every week you're going to hear this, you're going to get bored of it, but you can always click next podcast if so. If you have enjoyed it, if you listen to this podcast to the end of this show and you think that was great, I'd love to be able to help Nige out. There are loads of ways you can do it. The first and obvious way is to share the podcast. Send it out to people. If you know colleagues and friends who'd benefit from it, you think they'd enjoy it, just send them the link. Grab one of the links, or send them to www.nigelcreaser.com/podcasts. That's www.nigelcreaser.com/podcasts, and that will push them over to a Linktree link, and it's got all of the different ways they can consume the podcast. If you are feeling generous and have a big bag of cash, you could grab a copy of one of my books. Obviously, they're available in all the usual places, in print and digital. Again, jump on the website, www.nigelcreaser.com/shop, and that will give you a list of all the different ways that you can contribute and grab copies of the book. Also got links to all my guests' books on there as well, where I get a little bit of a kickback from them. If you are of a sporting mind, I have a number through doing some of my judo and running antics. I've managed to secure a few affiliate links and affiliates there as well. So in there, somewhere in the sponsors page, there's links to those as well. So clicking onto those and grabbing if you're looking to get super fit, then that would be fabulous as well, and I get a little kickback from those. I have a Patreon account. It's patreon.com/sundaylunchpm. So again, you can ping something in there, buy me a coffee or whatever. And finally, obviously the most important is coming back, listen again, because the more of you that come back, the more visibility I get, because there's more times that it's downloaded and all the SEO works and things like that. So yeah, that's it. So if you can help me out, I would be much appreciated. If you can't, don't worry about it. Thank you very much. Cheers now. Bye. Well, it's goodbye from me, Nigel Creaser, and it's goodbye from him, the Sunday Lunch PM. Goodbye.
Introduction. Hi, and welcome to Project Manager Productivity Hacks. Why write another book on productivity hacks? Are there not enough of them already? The trigger was my interview with Sarah M. Hoban for my podcast, the Sunday Lunch Project Manager Podcast. Plug. Find out more at www.nigelcreaser.com/Sarah M. Hoban. We talked about improving productivity for project managers, and during the conversation I recalled that a while ago I started a blog post in which I plan to share some ideas that I have used in my career to improve my productivity and get out of the office that little bit earlier. Over the years I have shared these with others, and almost every time I received a positive and enthusiastic response. Having rekindled the idea, I sat down and noted 11 hacks, tips, shortcuts, whatever you want to call them, that I have used over the years. Why 11? Well, it's one more than 10. This book goes up to 11. One for the Spinal Tap fans. I see productivity as remarkably similar to an exercise program. We all start off with good intentions, and some of the changes work great for us and others don't. Some changes stick and become part of our daily life, whereas others are just a real chore. Even the ones we found that work well for us and are straightforward to implement can, under certain circumstances, end up being dropped by us. Sometimes this happens consciously, and sometimes little by little over time. Whether building healthier habits or improving our productivity, it's not just a case of making the changes, and we are done. It takes repeated work. If you find them hard to implement, then they may not be for you in your current situation. If you start using them and end up letting them drift, then start again. Improving our productivity is something many of us strive to achieve, aiming for some kind of efficiency nirvana. Let me tell you, it ain't gonna happen. Perfection is a myth. Give yourself a break. It's a bit like yoga. You can't win at yoga. No matter how bendy you get, you can always be bendier. That's the same with personal productivity. You can't win at productivity. You can always be productivier.
Ed, is that a word?
I have not always been able to apply these hacks successfully, but that is not a reflection of the hacks themselves. It is more about my ability to stick with them even though I know they work. One last point, as with your fitness regime, trying to make loads of changes at once can spell disaster. I recommend that once you have a read of these hacks, choose one that excites you, maybe not excites but seems to resonate, and have a go at it. Once it is second nature to you, move on to the next one that spoke to you. If you find that the first one was not for you, then bin it. Choose another and try that one out, then rinse and repeat. So on with the hacks.